And when Andrew gets into his seat, I'm going to call Gary Middleton next. Okay, I call Gary Middleton.
Principal Deputy Speaker.
Minister.
Thank the member for his question. My department has a contract with 6 rural support networks to deliver the Rural Community Development Support Service across all rural areas of Northern Ireland. Since 2020-2021, my department has provided additional financial assistance to rural support networks through these contracts to work with community and voluntary groups in marginalised rural border communities where capacity is weak. This financial assistance has enabled the rural support networks to provide tailored support to build capacity of the community and voluntary groups in a rural border area to play a full and active role in helping their communities grow and flourish. My department has also piloted a Marginalised Minority Border Communities Digital Access Pilot Scheme, which completed in March 2023. The main aim of the pilot was to support community groups to enhance digital access for those living in a rural border area. All these initiatives are ongoing through policy evaluation. I will be giving careful consideration to the needs of marginalised minority communities as I inform my thinking and take decisions on future policies. You will be aware that the Department of Communities has statutory responsibility for all communities, and it is my intention to engage with executive colleagues to help inform future policy direction to ensure a better outcome for rural dwellers. Thank you.
Gary for supplementary.
Thank you, Principal Deputy Speaker. And can I thank the Minister for his comments and welcome the fact that the policy and the position will be reviewed. Would the Minister agree with me that many rural communities do feel disadvantaged in comparison with urban communities in terms of funding, particularly for community development? And will the Minister commit to working with those communities to ensure that they get their fair share of funding and support?
Minister.
I thank the member for his question, and I do agree with the member. And I met with officials last week just in terms of a role for all rural development programmes and policies around this. And as Minister, I intend to bring a fresh approach to this to see what more we can do to ensure that the rural needs are fully reflected by all government departments, because very conscious this doesn't just rest with myself. In terms of the rural development programme, which ran from 2014 to 2020, that is obviously of concern to members within this House and also rural communities, and I want to reassure the member and the rest of the House that despite the cessation of the rural development programme, the Department continues to invest in and support rural communities through a range of initiatives, and it is responsible for other departments to step forward, but I want to take a lead in this and see what we can do in terms of rural development, and I want to ensure we refresh our policy in this.
Car Hunter.
Madam Principal Deputy Speaker, Minister, coming from a rural constituency, I welcome discussion around this fund. Can I ask, how is the effectiveness of this fund being measured to ensure your department is best supporting marginalised people within isolated rural communities?
Minister.
I thank the member for his question. I think it's important that we evaluate a lot of these funds and see what their effectiveness is. Some of them were cast in a previous era around we're members of the EU, so we need to make sure that we're meeting the needs of rural communities. And what I'm seeing, particularly in terms of rural communities, is a sense of isolation. And Member Patsy McGlone raised at committee last week, rightfully so, the issue in terms of health service transformation and how we can ensure that we are reflecting the needs of rural communities as part of that. So we need to do this evaluation, and we need to ensure whatever we're doing is fit for purpose going forward.
John Blair.
Thank you, Principal Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Minister for his answers so far. Can I ask the Minister what plans he has, if any, to review the Rural Needs Act 2016, and if such a review were to take place, what this might look like?
Minister.
Thank the member for his question. In terms of the Rural Needs Act, I'm very conscious that there's a public duty upon public authorities to have due regard to the social and economic needs to people in rural areas when exercising their functions. My department continues to provide support to public authorities to help ensure that the Act is implemented effectively and delivers better outcomes for rural dwellers. The Department of Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs is not the only department responsible for addressing issues in our rural communities, and I intend to work with executive colleagues. I'm very conscious of the Act, but I would want very keen to review it to see if there's anything more we can do in legislation within what's left of the mandate to ensure that the needs of rural communities are better reflected, and whether the Rural Needs Act is actually fit for purpose.
Well, Stephen Dunn.
Principal Deputy Speaker.
Minister.
I thank the member for his question. The High Hedges Act, Northern Ireland 2011, is intended to provide a mechanism by which a complainant can resolve a problem caused by a high evergreen hedge through their local council if they have approached their neighbour and asked them to reduce its height, but have been unable to resolve the issue through discussion. I recognise the problems that hedges can cause if neglected or allowed to grow unchecked, which can have a significant impact on householders. Information gathered on the initial functioning of the Act between 2012 and 2016 showed only a small proportion of initial inquiries received by councils progressed to formal complaints. Further information for the period of 2016 to 2020 indicates the number of formal complaints remains low. In addition, the number of queries received by department annually is also small, with no significant issues regarding its operation having been raised. At present, I have been presented with no evidence to suggest a review of the High Hedges legislation is needed at this time. I will, however, be meeting with Council Chief Executives in due course through the representative body, which is Solace, and will be happy to discuss any issues they have with the application of the Act.
Stephen Dunn for supplementary.
Deputy Speaker, and thank the Minister for his answer. Given that it can be quite a complex and long drawn-out process for residents, does the Minister agree that the process could be made more effective and streamlined, as well as widened to deal with single problem trees over 2 metres, which it currently doesn't?
Minister.
I thank the member for his question. The legislation that's drafted is meant to be a last resort to resolving these issues, and has been given in statistics to me. A very small percentage of people actually go towards using the actual legislation. I'm happy to meet with the member if he has got any particular concerns around expanding the legislation, but currently I see the legislation as working, and really some of the discussion perhaps needs to be with the councils in terms of their operation of that. And I know someone who's representing North Down constituency, some of the particular instances where the member might be dealing with.
Mark Durkin.
The Minister's interpretation of what constitutes a high hedge might be a wee bit different to mine, but I wonder if the Minister could answer if there's been any analysis of the complaints and the reason why so many don't make the cut, for want of a better phrase, due to the non-inclusion of problem trees in the definition of high hedge.
Minister.
I thank the member for his question. The legislation states that the complaint only progresses if the Council considers that the complainant has not, and I'm quoting from the legislation, that the complainant has not taken all reasonable steps to resolve the matters complained of without proceeding by way of such a complaint to the Council. So that's the bar that's set before it can go. And often I think in life, if you try to discuss things before going towards a complaint, it can resolve things, and that's why the number of complaints haven't progressed.
Connie Egan.
Thank you, Minister. Minister, would you agree with me that overgrown hedges can cause real obstruction and issues in terms of accessibility when they're blocking a footpath or a road? And could you confirm who would be responsible for addressing that?
Minister.
I thank the member for her question, and perhaps that's one of the biggest correspondence we receive as elected members, and the default go-to is in terms of the Department for Infrastructure, and we need to find a way to ensure that those can be moved along much quicker, because there's public safety concerns when that occurs.
William Irwin. Minister.
As members will be aware, last September the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland directed my department to consult on a proposal to reduce the compensation rate for cattle removed under the Bovine TB programme. My own party's position in relation to the Secretary of State's stance in relation to this and his intervention on revenue raising is completely on the record. The consultation closed last Friday, the 8th of March. My officials have now begun the process of analysing the responses, and when this work is complete, they will provide a detailed summary for my consideration. Madam Principal Deputy Speaker, I am acutely aware of the devastating impact that a TB breakdown can have and the financial challenges this causes for farmers and farming families. I therefore appreciate that any proposal which suggests reducing TB compensation will be extremely difficult for the farming community. The budget settlement for the next financial year will have a significant bearing on what my department can do in this and many other areas.
William Irwin for supplementary.
Minister accepted if the department goes ahead and cuts compensation by 75% of the value of the stock, this will create financial hardship for many families.
I agree with the member, and it was not my proposal, it was the Secretary of State's proposal to consult about reducing the compensation rate to 90% and then 75%. That was the consequence of this place not sitting and us being able to make our own policy decisions in relation to this. I'm determined to bring a fresh approach to this issue to see what way we can have a sustainable future for our farming community and also then for my department, but the focus is upon the farming community. As members be aware, we have now appointed a new Chief Veterinary Officer, Brian Dewar, and I'd like to congratulate him upon his appointment. And I have been engaging with my Permanent Secretary, and one of the first tasks I've asked Brian to do is take a fresh look at this whole issue in terms of bovine TB and how we can provide a new way forward for Northern Ireland, and that's something that he'll be getting to work with in the very few weeks ahead.
Patty McClone.
Frio Lascan Collia, agus Muigas Leishan Era Fosta. And could I concur with your congratulations to your new Chief Veterinary Officer, Brian Dewar? I've met him on a number of occasions, and I'm sure he'll prove to be very capable and effective public servant. Minister, in light of, we're talking about compensation here, in light of addressing the real problem, which is the spread of TB, can you advise just what advice have you taken, what methods have you sought to establish how TB has been addressed in other jurisdictions, and what conclusions has the Department come up with as to what is the best and most effective way to attempt to eradicate this disease?
Minister.
I thank the member for his question. I've engaged with my counterparts in Ireland, Charlie McConalogue. I met with him just recently, and also my Scottish counterpart last week, and this is one of the issues we have discussed. The whole issue of bovine TB is multifaceted, it is quite complex, but I'm very conscious that whilst our herd infection rate would be about 10%, in Ireland it's 5%, and it is well below 1% in Scotland. So there's different lessons to be learned from across the UK and Ireland in relation to this, and that's why I've asked Brian to look at this and see what way we can provide a way forward. And I get the members' concern around this in terms of the devastating this impact can have upon a farm. The mental health upon the farming community when this arrives, not just within that farm but in the wider community, is really significant, and we need to find a way that we can bring that and turn that around.
Jim Allister.
It may not be the Minister's proposal, but he is the one who will make the decision. Can I ask him in that context, can he think of any justification for paying less than the market value?
Minister. Thank the member for his question. I'm very conscious that whilst we have a 100% compensation rate, actually it doesn't cover the full consequential losses to the farm business, and also the fact that it's referred to as compensation actually doesn't actually fully understand the impact this has upon the farming community. What I would say to the House here today is the budget I receive for next year will determine an awful lot in terms of what I can and can't do. I do not wish to change the compensation rate, but if the budget is slashed to the effect that I cannot statutorily undertake my duties, then I will be left in no other place to move.
Robbie Butler.
Principal Deputy Speaker, the Minister showed last week that he's very keen to act and bring forward policies and legislation that he takes a position on. With regard to bovine TB, it's been a problem that's been around for many, many years. Would the Minister like to outline what his ambition will be and what his likely policy changes will look like?
Minister.
My overall ambition would be to eliminate it in Northern Ireland because of the impact it's having upon the farming community and upon our budget. But what I need to do is I need to be science and evidence led, but also need to bring stakeholders with me. So that's why I'm not coming here today announcing initial decisions on this. That's why I'm engaging with the new Chief Veterinary Officer in terms of options available, and I will bring options back to the stakeholders and make it clear that we need to find a way forward in relation to this. This has been a real problem, but I know that it's now got a situation where it's really, really critical, particularly in the counties of Fermanagh, for example. So we need to find a way forward in relation to this, but we need to make sure whatever we're doing it right, and we're not then subsequent to legal challenges where we were, for example, in relation to the wildlife strategy, and then those legal challenges were successful.
Danny Donnelly.
Thank you, Principal Deputy Speaker. Question 5, please.
Minister.
Progress has been made on key requirements of the Climate Change Act in Northern Ireland 2022, but in the absence of a sitting government for 2 years, this has had a real impact in terms of what I can do and what the government can do in terms of implementing the obligations set out within the Climate Change Act. Extensive consultation exercise took place last year on public body reporting regulations proposed 2030 and 2040 emission reduction targets and also carbon budgets. I plan to bring proposals on public body reporting regulations and carbon budgets to the Executive and Assembly colleagues for their agreement very soon. In addition, DAERA is leading the development of Northern Ireland's first climate action plan in collaboration with all other departments. This plan will set out our collective approach to delivering the emissions reductions required to achieve our first carbon budget. The draft climate action plan will be consulted on for 16 weeks. The first climate action plan for which we want to consult upon is dated 2023 to 2027. The fact that we're in 2024 and consulting upon a climate action plan that started in 2023 perhaps gives members an impact of collapse of these institutions. Work is also progressing around the establishment of a Just Transition Commission. I hope to issue proposals for this consultation later in 2024. I want to ensure that climate change and green growth considerations are central to all policy and budgetary decisions taken by all departments across Northern Ireland. It is essential that an assessment of climate, environment and just transition impacts is embedded in decision-making processes. This is something I have already spoken to the Finance Minister about. Delivering the transformational change that an Act requires will be extremely challenging, but it also presents significant opportunities for our economy, society and environment.
Donny Donnelly for a supplementary.
Speaker, just to ask the Minister what role climate change should have in a future programme for government, and if he would be happy to accept an invite to a future meeting of the Climate Action APG.
Minister.
Thank the member for his question. The whole issue of climate change must be central to the next programme for government. This is my top priority as Minister, but it should be the top priority across government because there's opportunities arising out of this, but if we don't do the investment associated with that, we'll not be able to realise that. And I'd be delighted to go to one of the next meetings of the APG. I think it's an important APG, and I know you chair it, and I'm glad to attend.
O'Toole.
Thank you, Madam Principal Deputy Speaker. Minister, I welcome the fact that you have commitment to this and also that you have said clearly that this should be a collective climate action plan, that all departments have responsibility and you will encourage them to take their responsibility. To that end, the Infrastructure Department, in a written answer to me, did not confirm that they would meet their obligation under the Act to deliver 10% of their budget to be spent on active travel in the next financial year. Will you commit to writing to the Infrastructure Minister and encouraging him, further to what your previous answer, encouraging him to ensure that that 10% is spent on active travel?
Minister.
Thank the member for his question. It's important that all departments live up to their legal obligations arising from that, and I think that is across all government departments in Northern Ireland. I will be engaging with the Minister for Infrastructure alongside the Minister for the Economy and the Minister for Communities, who have a significant input in terms of the Climate Action Plan, and in addition then to the Executive colleagues once we're able to bring it to the Executive. So that engagement will be ongoing. I know what my responsibilities are, but these are responsibilities across government and society, and I think it's important we all live up to them.
Jim Allister.
The Minister knows what his responsibilities are. Has he costed them in terms of meeting the 2030 targets? And if so, what are those costings?
Work is ongoing to scope and refine the costs associated with delivering the commitments which will set out in Northern Ireland's first Climate Action Plan. Some of these will fall to DAERA, but other departments will bear costs too. The Department of Finance commissioned a Budget 2024 to 2025 exercise around departments on the 18th of February. My department is currently firming up its projected costs and bids for next year as part of that exercise. These will be considered by the Executive along with bids from all departments in due course. Projected costs for 2025 to 26 and beyond will be worked up as part of the budget exercises covering those years. It is important that the costs and opportunities of addressing climate change are embedded within economic appraisal processes. It is also important to emphasise that these are upfront costs and they represent investments in improved society for future generations, and the cost of delaying action will ultimately be much greater. I would also add that the UK Government's financial settlement to Northern Ireland, which allows us to live up to our climate change obligations and to take advantage of those opportunities, falls well short in Northern Ireland, and it is about time the UK Government realised that Northern Ireland is funded below objective need and we're allowed to be able to invest in our public services for the good of all people in Northern Ireland.
Keith Buchanan. Minister.
With your permission, I would like to group together questions 6 and 12. Both questions ask for updates on the opening of the Rural Micro Capital Grant Scheme. My officials have completed an evaluation of the 2022 Rural Micro Capital Grant Scheme. The findings, lessons learned and recommendations from the 2022 evaluation and the independent evaluation of the schemes delivered between 2016 and 2021 have been considered, and a business case proposing to launch the scheme in 2024-2025 is at an advanced stage. Subject to my consideration and, importantly, budget availability, I anticipate being in a position to make an announcement regarding the scheme early in the new financial year.
Keith, for supplementary.
Thank you, Minister, for your response. And that's obviously positive news that it's going to be launched this year. And I take that as that it will be launched, I assume. Obviously, Minister, that was to be launched last October, and I had met your officials on several occasions to forward that. And I want to just emphasise we don't want to miss any more time to get that launched and out in the community. It's good. It does amazing work for a small amount of money in a lot of areas. So I just want you to stand up to your commitment and release it as soon as possible.
Thank the member for his question and his engagement with me in previous weeks with regards to this. I met with officials last week and we talked about this, and it's my desire not to delay on this and we can get this off the ground as soon as possible.
Colin Gildernew.
Minister, and thank you for the answer. So this is a key scheme for some of these small groups. It's the only one they get. No schemes received support last year. Will you, along with the timeline, look at putting in a second scheme in this financial year to support some of those hard-pressed groups? Thank you.
I'll try to do whatever I can to ensure that financial support gets out to rural communities. The budget for next year will be quite determinant in terms of what I can do in regards to this. I also want to have a fresh approach. This scheme needs to go ahead. We need to get the money out in relation to this, just in terms of how we do grant schemes to rural communities, because I want to make sure that we're reducing the amount of bureaucracy associated with this, because I know that there's an awful lot of work has to be done for what are relatively small amounts of money. But let me add, those small amounts of money have a great impact upon communities, and it's important we get that money out to areas because these have a real transformational impact in villages and towns across Northern Ireland.
Patrick Brown.
I thank the Minister for his positive response regarding the Rural Micro Capital Grant Scheme. Could I ask the Minister to outline how this scheme will help rural community and voluntary organisations?
Minister.
I thank the member for his question. I'll make sure I give you the correct answer. The Rural Micro Capital Grant Scheme will make small capital grants available to rural community and voluntary groups to purchase capital items which enhance or provide new services that can help to alleviate poverty, reduce isolation and improve health and well-being in the local community. This is a bottom-up approach which allows the applicant organisations to determine what they require to enhance the provision of activities in their local area.
Liz Kimmins.
Shocked. Question number 7, please.
Minister.
Thank the member for her question. I'm aware that water quality is not what it should be. It's a bit of an understatement, frankly. Work to improve the water quality of rivers will require collective action across government, the public and private sectors, but also wider society. I intend to bring the draft Environmental Improvement Plan to Executive for consideration later this month. The plan, the first for Northern Ireland, lays out my commitment to improving water quality. As well as the Environment Improvement Plan, my department also has other relatively statutory obligations, including the requirement to publish and update a river basin management plan. This takes an integrated approach to the protection, improvement and sustainable use of the water environment. Before bringing the third cycle river basin management plan to the Executive, I will need time to consider the outworkings of other relevant reports, for example from the Office of Environmental Protection, that are due to be published in the near future, as well as the water quality review on Lough Neagh. Additionally, I am keen to hear views of key stakeholders, but also mindful of our budgetary position to determine the most appropriate course of action for the River Basin Management Plan. My vision is to have an environment where our water bodies are at good status or better, and which support biodiversity and contribute to the health and well-being of everyone.
Ms Kimmins for supplementary.
Thank the Minister for his answer. Minister, in addition to finding that none of the North Rivers had an overall good quality rating, the State of Rivers report also found that they only achieved a moderate chemical status due to the presence of toxic chemicals in the water. Does the Minister then have any other plans then to address the presence of these chemicals, such as PFAS, by, for example, following the European Commission's strategy to phase non-essential ones out, or at least by bringing it into line with the EU Drinking Water Directive?
Minister.
Thank the member for her question. When I met Charlie McConalogue as the Minister in the South 2 weeks ago, it's something we talked about, because there is learnings we can take from European Union policy and how we can ensure that our standards in terms of the environment are good in Northern Ireland. In terms of the State of Our Rivers report, this was concerning but sadly not surprising reading in terms of Northern Ireland. The Northern Ireland Environment Agency published the Water Framework Directive Statistics Report in December 2021, which included this information that no river water bodies in Northern Ireland achieved overall good status. At the time, my officials explained this was due to the inclusion of so-called forever chemicals in the assessment. Due to the biocumulative and persistent nature of these forever chemicals, they are present in waterways across the world. They were detected at all monitor stations and resulted in failures of all those stations. These failures were extrapolated to all water bodies, and hence no surface water body achieved good chemical status. This is an area of priority for me, and if we get a chance at question time today, I've got a few more things I would like to say about Lough Neagh.
Deborah Erskine.
And I thank the Minister for his answers so far. Recently, Northern Ireland Water came to the Infrastructure Committee, and during that evidence session, the Chief Executive said that we are currently overspilling into our waterways at a significant amount. In fact, she couldn't detail how many overspills there are within the NI water system. That's hugely concerning. I would like to know what his department is doing in relation to speaking with the Department for Infrastructure, and what NIEA are doing within his department to tackle and deal with this issue urgently.
Minister. Thank the member for her question. I do have concerns in terms of the levels of overspills and the fact that we don't have reliable data when that's occurring, and I will be seeking a meeting with Northern Ireland Water to discuss that. The issue in terms of wastewater infrastructure in Northern Ireland is a very concerning matter. It's not fit for purpose, and what we're doing is that we're polluting our environment again day after day in many occasions because the system isn't up to scratch. We're also inhibiting house building and economic development in Northern Ireland. As an executive, we need to face up to that, and we need to ensure that we're making the capital investment to ensure that we're not polluting our waterways.
Steve Aiken.
Yes, thank you very much indeed, and may I thank the Minister for his comments so far. Minister, you were referring earlier to Lough Neagh, and one of the major concerns we have Lough Neagh is about the zebra mussel population. Is there anything specifically about water quality and the issues you're going to deal with that to deal with this particular challenge?
I thank the member for his question. Zebra mussels are part of a mix of problems that are affecting Lough Neagh, and I hope to, as I said, this month launch an environmental improvement plan for Northern Ireland, and that reflects the fact that this isn't just the soil and bed of Lough Neagh that are affected. This is the catchment area that's going into Lough Neagh that is causing those issues. So we need to launch this strategy, and hopefully the executive will support me at the next meeting so I can get that progressed. And then in April, I hope to launch an action plan associated with Lough Neagh. There's currently about 100 different areas in terms of recommendations. We're distilling those down. Hopefully we'll be able to progress that next month. So this isn't the fact that we're moving slowly in this, we're moving as fast as we can. But the issues that are affecting Lough Neagh, we all know what they are. There's a significant issue in terms of agricultural runoff. There's also an issue in terms of wastewater infrastructure, which we just talked about. There's an issue in terms of ageing septic tanks. We have zebra mussels, which are contributing to the issue, and we also have climate change. So what this is going to require is extremely difficult decisions to turn this situation around. I'm up for playing my role in relation to this, but it's also going to require a cross-governmental approach, working in conjunction with non-governmental organisations, so we can actually see a way forward. The scenes that we saw at Lough Neagh last year are very likely to occur again this year. Actually, in some cases, we've already had 2 reports of blue-green algae in terms of Lough Neagh. So the situation as it's presented itself to me, but I'm prepared to provide the leadership to try to steer a course out of this.
Alex Eason.
Right, Principal Deputy Speaker.
Minister, quick answer.
The Test and Vaccinate or Remove, or TPR, research project was carried out over 5 years between 2014 and 2018. The project sought to capture badgers, test them for TB, and then vaccinate those with negative results or remove those infected with the disease. It encompassed an area of approximately 100 square kilometres near Banbridge in County Down. During the project, 824 unique badgers were captured, some of which were captured and tested more than once. 1,520 badger captures were made in total, 146 of which tested positive for bovine TB at the Settleside dual path platform blood test. This equates to 10.3% of total tests over the course of the project. 781 unique badgers were vaccinated at least once, while 108 infected badgers were euthanised in years 2 to 5. The data indicated that the intervention had little effect on the badger population size, while this, combined with GPS recordings and badger geotyping, all consistently show no increased movement of badgers, indicating that trap-side testing was a viable intervention. It is very important to note that whilst valuable field data and deployment experience was gained through the project results, it was not intended to be evidence of the effectiveness of TVR as a means for reducing TB in cattle.
Sorry, Alex, there's no time for supplementary. The Minister's run over listed question time. So it's now over, and we'll move on to 15 minutes of topical questions. Question 4 has been withdrawn, so I'd like to call Patsy McGlone.
Minister, could I ask, during committee evidence on Thursday, we heard that your department was going to use the veil of the Small Business Research Initiative to look at methods of dealing with the blue-green algae on Loch Ness. Could you give us some more details around that, please, Minister?
Minister?
So there's probably two aspects around this. AFBI have been doing a research study in terms of just actually giving particular statistical evidence in terms of what's contributing to this, because we've got rough percentages in terms of what's contributing to the issues in terms of Loch Ness. The one issue that you're referring to will be a 2-year study, I understand, to try to find scientific interventions that could happen around Loch Ness, which feeds into the idea that there is no quick wins in relation to this, but we're using all what we can to find a way forward in terms of Loch Ness.
Patsy for a supplementary.
Minister, could you just give us some idea as to what the process will then be? Will it be the case that the research will be done, and then if there are potential resolutions identified or good resolutions identified within that research, will there be invitations then to companies that might fit the bill for those resolutions?
Minister.
Thank you. I don't want to prejudge what it will say, and in terms of the action plan, which we hope to launch next month, we'll give a bit more information in relation to that. But also, this will require funding in terms of the interventions required. So there's been many people who have been in correspondence with my department bringing forward technical solutions or suggestions around this, and we are evaluating those as well. But there is sort of key fundamentals around this in terms of agriculture runoff, wastewater infrastructure and old septic tanks we're going to need to take action in relation to. And I'm very keen that we do this through a process of bringing people with us in terms of education and incentives, but ultimately it will be required that we have to do enforcement around this, because those who are polluting our waterways need to stop.
Alan Robinson.
Madam Deputy Principal Speaker, would the Minister agree with me that it is bitterly frustrating for those residents and business who have to live and trade beside unsightly and derelict buildings, especially when local councils have very weak powers to address such buildings?
Minister.
I understand the member's questions and the concerns that local residents would have in relation to that. District councils are often the area for enforcement around this. If there are any particular concerns, I would ask them to write with me, and we can correspond and see what we can do in relation to that.
Alan for a supplementary.
Thanks, Minister. Minister, I was going to ask you if I write to you, would you consider visiting East Londonderry, where I'd be very happy to accompany you and allow you to meet with some businesses who have to trade beside such buildings?
Minister. I'm happy to consider the member's invite. If there's an ongoing investigation and enforcement action, we obviously need to tread carefully in relation to that, but I'm happy to speak to the member even after the chamber here today in terms of any particular issues you may have.
Thank you. Minister, could you please outline what plans you have to ensure that more trees are planted across Northern Ireland?
Minister.
Thank the member for a question. This is something that's quite important to me, and it's quite important to the area associated with climate change. Increasing the area of forests and woodlands is a key challenge and focus for my department. We need to significantly accelerate annual planting rates to reach 12% of land area by 2050. It's currently at 8.6%. I intend to take this forward as a critical element of DAER's contribution to climate change mitigation and the legislative obligations for a balanced pathway to net zero carbon emissions by 2050. In line with the CCC recommendation, the Department launched its 10-year Forests for Our Future programme from 2020 to 2030, which aims to plant 9,000 hectares of new woodland over the period.
Connie for supplementary.
Thank you, Minister. That's very encouraging. In our own constituency of North Down, volunteers have recently been replanting a community orchard in Hunts Park, Donaghadee. Would you join me to meet those volunteers and see the brilliant work they've carried out?
Minister.
Thank the member for her supplementary. I would be delighted to. There's many examples of community interventions that are taking place here. With a small amount of grant funding, they're able to achieve quite a lot, not just in terms of forestry cover, but also the benefits to the local community. So delighted to get along to Hunts Park, and it's an area which is obviously being revitalised as a result of this work. So very, very keen to take that up.
Question 4 has been withdrawn, so I call Kelly Armstrong.
Deputy Speaker, Minister, later this week there will be a report coming out on the impact of poverty. One of the key issues is the cost of food. What role do you have to play with regards to food poverty?
Minister. Thank you. Primary responsibility for addressing poverty rests with the Department for Communities. It is, however, anticipated that the forthcoming anti-poverty strategy will make specific reference to food poverty and insecurity. Food poverty is a multifaceted issue. It is recognised that no single department has all the policy tools required, and it is not simply a financial issue. A cross-departmental approach will be required when agreeing actions to address this issue, and will seek to link to all relevant strategies, including the Food Strategy Framework. My department currently provides assistance in areas such as redistribution of surplus food through organisations such as FareShare, as well as providing a subsidised school milk scheme to contribute to efforts to alleviate food poverty. My department is also leading on the Northern Ireland Food Strategy Framework, which proposes a new whole-of-government approach to food in Northern Ireland. This new collaborative approach is about government working together to deliver better outcomes for the people of Northern Ireland. I look forward to receiving briefing from my officials on the Food Strategy Framework and how my department can work with other departments to address the fundamental issue of food poverty.
Kelly, supplementary, please.
Thank you, and thank you, Minister, for your answers so far. Minister, you've mentioned there that the Department for Communities would be responsible for the anti-poverty strategy. We haven't yet seen a draft of that strategy. Could I ask if you could write to the Minister for Communities to ensure that the work that you're doing with food poverty can be included in that?
Minister.
I thank the member for a question. I was at an event alongside yourself with Ards and North Down Community Advice, and it was concerning to see that the level of pace that should be associated with an anti-poverty strategy is not occurring, and I will be writing to the Minister about the need to urgently progress this. It is a matter of shame upon government in Northern Ireland that people are forced into poverty, and we need to find a way forward around that, and what we need to do is have this anti-poverty strategy progress without any delay whatsoever.
Diane Forsyth.
Madam Principal Deputy Speaker, and thanks to the Minister for his conversation so far. I just wanted to ask, does the Minister have any structures in place or plans for solution-based joined-up working with other departments and public bodies to deal with crossover issues of importance?
Thank the member for a question. I think it's important that where there's issues that there needs to be a collaborative approach, that we do that, and Lough Neagh will hopefully be the example where we can do that. I think government in Northern Ireland, the way it's structured in terms of each department being legally separate, can provide a barrier associated with that. Also, the issue of financing can become an issue where each department holds its own budget. But I'm not going to be someone who's going to hold back and wanting to work with other departments in relation to a myriad of issues, whether it's Lough Neagh, coastal erosion, climate change, so many other issues, because together we can achieve a lot more.
Diane for a supplementary.
And thank you. And would the Minister agree that where issues are considered dangerous, urgent, or in the interest of public safety, like the issue of the rapidly collapsing cliffs in Kilkeel, which I have liaised with the Minister on, and I thank him for his engagement on that. For this, the focus should be on recognising the issue and putting an action plan in place, and where other bodies are passing around responsibility, we don't want to end up in a position where there's an ultimate crisis here. And collaborative work, and you did mention the coastal erosion there, but I would hope that we could have some sort of action plan structure in place.
Minister.
I'm aware of these issues. There's been correspondence and assembly questions on that. If the member is free this afternoon, I'm happy to meet with her around this and see what more we can do around this, because public safety must be the priority of every minister in government.
I call Michelle McElveen.
The Minister will be aware that bovine viral diarrhoea is still prevalent,
and its existence could disadvantage Northern Ireland in terms of trade. Could I ask the Minister when he will move to enforce the compulsory removal of infected animals?
Minister.
Thank the member for a question. This is something I talked with the Ulster Farmers Union at a recent meeting. It's something I've been engaging with veterinary colleagues about, and I want to be able to move in relation to this matter without any delay.
Michelle for a supplementary.
For his answer. The Minister obviously referred to the appointment of the new CVO, but I understand that there is a challenge within his department in recruiting vets. The salary is less competitive, and there are obviously issues with recruitment to other regions and to the private sector. Given the importance of the role to his department, will the Minister commit to doing a salary review for those positions?
Minister.
Very conscious of this issue in terms of their headcount. We're significantly below what we need in terms of vets in Northern Ireland. It's something I discussed last week with my permanent secretary around this. It's something I'll have to engage with the Department of Finance around this issue, because we need to be able to attract and retain the best talent we can. We have fantastic people working with us, but we need more people to come on board. And I know this is something that I spoke to my colleague in the South, Charlie McConlogue, that people are leaving from Northern Ireland to go to the South because of better paid terms and conditions. This isn't something unique to my department. It's also an issue in terms of health and education. So what we need, and this is very fundamental, is for the UK Government to understand the unique circumstances of Northern Ireland and ensure our funding settlement allows us to reflect that. Let's be clear, for every £1 that's spent in England, Scotland gets £1.45. We're getting about £1.21. There's a problem there, and what's happening is that we're not able to pay people the correct salaries.
Nick Matheson.
Thank you, Principal Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Minister for all his answers so far. Could the Minister outline what protections are in place to protect fallow deer in and around the Clandyboy estate area?
Minister. Thank the member for his question. I know this is something that he has raised with me previously, and it is a matter of concern. The department has some powers in relation to this, but also it does relate back to district councils. Fallow deer are protected across Northern Ireland under the terms of the Wildlife Northern Ireland Order 1985. This makes it an offence to kill, injure or take the species during a specified close season or at night. It also prohibits the use of certain firearms and ammunition to shoot deer. Additionally, it is an offence to take or remove any live deer or to mark or attach tags to any live deer. The Police Service in Northern Ireland enforce the terms of the Wildlife Northern Ireland Order 1985. My officials in Northern Ireland Environment Agency, working closely with the PSNI, jointly chair the Partnership for Action Against Wildlife Crime Northern Ireland, which brings together statutory, non-statutory agencies and interested parties with the common goal of combating wildlife crime through education and publicity. Whilst Clandyboy is a private estate, my officials are not aware of any reports of listed offences occurring, and that would require additional protections for its fallow deer herd. Any concerns should be reported immediately to the police.
Nick for a supplementary.
I thank the Minister for his answer and for his engagement on this issue. Could the Minister provide an update on the plans to redevelop the White Spots Country Park situated in the area in question?
Minister.
Thank the member for his question. This falls within the complementary fund and it's sitting within my department. This is progressing well, and I'm happy to meet with the member around this to see what more we can do, because this is a real area of potential, not just for Bangor but also for Newton Arts.
Harry Harvey.
Madam Speaker. Minister, further to the response to my colleague from North Down regarding the bovine TB testing, I just wondered, could you tell me, the department had previously plans to enhance testing. Could the Minister comment on whether he plans to do this?
Minister.
My desire to do that. What happened within this current financial year as a result of the punishment budget which was inflicted upon Northern Ireland by the Secretary of State. My permanent secretary had to try to live within the budget limits required, and as a result the testing regime was reduced, and that had a real consequence. And I think bringing us back to where the testing was previously is a fundamental thing we need to be able to do, and that's what the budget for next year hopefully will enable if I get the correct settlement.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Minister, for your answer so far. Minister, maybe you could provide me with an update on the challenges presented by the outbreak of blue tongue disease on the mainland. Thank you.
Quick response, Minister.
I'm aware of the challenges associated with that, and I've had lots of correspondence in relation to that. I do get a mixed variety of correspondence on this, and there is a significant proportion of people who are concerned about ensuring that blue tongue does not come into Northern Ireland. I do know that there's been financial hardship associated with that in terms of the restrictions in terms of movements, but what I need to do as Minister is ensure that we keep blue tongue out of Northern Ireland.
Point of order.
Thank you, Madam Principal Deputy Speaker. I wanted on a point of order to correct the record from earlier. I was asked specifically when we felt that the legislation to have live links as part of the primary legislation would become operable. And I had said, I think, summer 2026. I can actually report it will be summer 2025 because it did seem like a long way away when I said it. So I went back and checked and it's summer 2025. So members who were concerned about the extension of the coronavirus cover for that may be relieved to hear that it will be sooner than I had anticipated.
And I thank the Minister for raising that point of order, and I'm sure the record will be corrected. Could members take their ease, please?